Another thing I have to say, which applies for everybody, for everyone, what I realized recently, is that there are certain developmental stages of the essence of the child, of the essence, that are supposed to be happening here as a human being, like the first stages of life. Some spiritual teaching talk about it, as well as in psychological regular teaching, Erickson, stages of life, first few years, something needs to be worked out around safety. I mean, well, like I'm safe and this, and I belong, and then something relationally, and something about, we were supposed ideally, think of tribes, supposed ideally to go through some stages of growing up while being kids, where, and they had trainings made for that, some initiation, and they were elders and they were warriors, and yeah, so then the child would more easily go through these stages. But for us, they didn't happen because maybe our parents didn't really figure that shit out. They didn't go through those stages. And also some teachings, this idea, several teachings actually, the part of growing up. Also, by the way, this idea of growing up, it's an interesting idea that, the spiritual development needs to include the full development. It's not just transcendental thing. So Ken Wilber was saying that this development happens on 3 different avenues: waking up, growing up, cleaning up, and waking up, or waking up, growing up, and cleaning up. The waking up is anything to do with a lot of what we are doing here. This non-duality, fourth way, Buddhism, all of that are about waking up. But those teachings, they are kind of meant to be helpful if we have already got some kind of developmental benchmarks. But many of us, we don't have those benchmarks, so we go into waking up, which is good, it's fine, because you're waking up, you're more conscious, less identified, then you have much more ability to have options here and to do something. But we have unresolved stuff from earlier stages of life, and like mastering this, money, food, and sex. Money, food, and sex. And anything to do with that, like money. We can have here extremes, like can be the, man, I don't like it, I don't, some kind of more like a younger psychological self that is rejecting the responsibility of the adult and doesn't want to, it's like, no, and then doesn't have money, and then it suffers, and it creates a whole loop of suffering and psychological problems. And other people, they go on the other extreme, that I need to make money and make a lot of money, and it's all about making money, and there's no balance. Anyway, my point here is that as we are becoming more conscious, we are going to be conscious now of some kind of shit that is from an earlier developmental stage. I guess part of growing up, let's say, is like, okay, to understand that life has pleasure and pain. That's how it is. And not to seek pleasure and comfort and avoid discomfort and pain and suffering. And that's why in some ancient initiations, the initiation involved hardship, pain, like searing, I don't know, branding, something. Part of growing up is some kind of sense of, some integrity, accountability, keeping one's word, having a direction, having a sense of mission and following up with it, taking responsibility. Yeah, so in my case, I didn't get a lot of this. I didn't get like about money and relationship and sex, no guidance. So then I was impacted by the culture and my own life. And I went for spiritual teachings and awakening, and it was good. But at some point, when I went back to life, I was afraid and I couldn't do it and I didn't know. And I was like, oh, you know. So I had to catch up a little bit with the world. And so it feels like you are catching up with this now. You are finding some job that is meaningful, that you want to do. It's going to bring challenges. You need to wake up and go there. You need to. Again, I didn't have the right teaching or modeling of relationship. And then, no matter how far I will go into awakening, I will keep having the same shit over and over again with relationship. So the awakening teachings, they couldn't solve that thing. So I need to do other stuff. I need to suffer. Suffering is good. To suffer, like, man, I'm tired of poverty, man. I'm tired of this. I'm tired of the same relational thing. And suffering met with some wisdom and earnestness, teachings. Then, so we continue growing, waking up, but then we start grow up. And the cleaning up is, or whatever is there off, that creates problems. That's, trauma work and limiting belief work and, negative self-talk. This is all cleaning up. From the fourth way point of view, also the instinctive center doesn't like to make effort, doesn't like to spend energy, unless it can spend a lot of energy sometimes if it is for something that it wants. Like, let's say one can become a workaholic or work hard, but for what? For stability, for whatever, abundance, because that is also instinctive, so it's willing to do that. But as a rule of thumb, the instinctive center wants to conserve energy. And so we need to be able to be more than the instinctive center in order to keep growing up and waking up. The instinctive center is like a denying force. It's like a brake.